Good morning, good morning. This is Carrie Ann, your favorite local go-to realtor here in Northeast Florida. And today I am really excited to have the opportunity to sit down with Christie from the Heirloom Yard. She's going to explain how the Heirloom Yard came to be, everything that they're offering for our community. So you guys stay tuned. Okay, Christie, thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to seeing your garden today. And we're just going to start off real quick with, tell me about the Heirloom Yard and what it is and what it means to you.
Perfect. So we are a floral design studio, primarily working with the flowers that we grow here. So we're here on South 10th Street, and we have a pretty extensive garden space that we do a bunch of perennials, cut flowers, annuals, and then we also grow a lot of things from bulbs. In the winter we grow tulips and we grow lilies. And sort of the hallmarks of our business are bouquets. We have subscription programs. We also do custom floral arrangements, like we're traditional florist. And then we also do small events, and then we also host workshops at our space.
Okay, so that prompted me to another question. So with the bulbs, because that's something I am not very good at, so which are the best kind for Northeast Florida?
So we work in tulips, but we work in tulips that we chill ourselves. So that's really where the trick is. Is because most tulips need anywhere between 13 to 20 weeks of chill hours, and that doesn't organically happen here. So we do a little magic. We work with our walk-in cooler, and we trick them into thinking it's winter, so we keep them in there for.
So you dig them up every time?
No, we treat all of our tulips as annuals. So we buy the bulbs every single year, grow them out, and then we compost them after that.
Make sure I'm saying it right, dahlias?
Dahlias.
Those are some of my favorite. Would that be a similar situation?
Dahlias are different. They're grown from tubers. They're not grown from bulbs. And they don't require chill hours. I think what happens with dahlias here is the heat factor. So they are a native of Mexico, and so while they do like the heat, it's the humidity and things like that that are tricky for them. And when we have extensive periods of rain, that's tricky for them as well. So dahlias definitely do well here. I think you just need to figure out sort of the timing. So grow them over the early spring and then again in the fall. So they're not the summer flower that I think people think of from coming from like Pacific Northwest or places farther north from here. Some people have a lot of success with them. They take up a lot of space, and because we're such small scale, it's not something that we spend a lot of time and energy on. We definitely have some dahlias and we use them periodically, but there's folks that are better at it. So we sort of leave that to people who know what they're doing.
Now, I'm going to ask one more question about that. Since they are tubers, does that mean that they have to be dug up in between the spring and fall, or they just stay there?
People dig them up because they can't handle a hard freeze. So, which we don't have here. So you definitely can leave them in the ground and almost perennialize them here. For many other climates, people dig them up because there's a danger of them either rotting if you have a very high water table or excessive moisture, or they can freeze and then rot if you have that, which again, both of those things we don't have here.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you another question. You've got obviously you know a whole lot about flowers. So before this life, what was your previous life?
So my professional background is in retail operations. So that was what I spent the lion's share of my career doing, working for major brands, running stores, policies and procedures, HR, that sort of thing. So I think running a business is really sort of my background. And because my background was in operations, which is very time and schedule and organization, that really leads into this. So I had never done anything like this professionally before we moved here.
Okay, so since you haven't done it before, and what made you go towards flowers? What made you choose that as a business?
I think two things. I mean, I've always loved flowers, you know, whether it was like growing them on a home scale, you know, some of my more creative pursuits as far as like painting and things like that always revolved around flowers and things like that. And then, you know, I wanted a legit business. Like I wanted something that, you know, kept me accountable, because I think there's a fine line between a business and a hobby. I think if you have a hobby, even if you monetize your hobby, you could sort of skate on certain things and not be very committed to it. But I wanted a legitimate business with a customer base, a schedule, and things that we were sort of known for. So that's what sort of attracted me to it. And I felt like if it was something in that vein of flowers that I was already passionate about. It's that age-old thing where it doesn't really feel like work.
Right.
So, I mean, there are days it definitely feels like work. Like, if you see me after, like, Mother's Day weekend and I'm like this, like, it definitely feels like work. Or when it's, like, 3,000 degrees outside and we're having to flip a bed, because there is even though it doesn't look like farming, I mean, this is farming. It's farming. On a very, very small scale. So there's parts of that are really not glamorous, but I love it. And I love, obviously, what we've been able to create in the community. And, I mean, when you're around flowers, it can never be bad.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a lover of flowers, too. My grandfather was huge, and that's where I got my love, and I try really hard, but I'm still learning.
It's very different here. I mean, I learn every day, and Mother Nature will always remind you who's in charge.
Yes, she sure does. She sure does. Okay, so since we now know what you did in the past, where did you're not local, so where did you move here from?
So most recently, my husband and I lived in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
So he was planning to retire from his business, and we were looking to make a move to Florida. I wanted something that was in a historic area. We were in Baltimore City, so we were used to being able to walk everywhere, which this town definitely has. And obviously the farther south you go in Florida, the more northern it feels. And so I wanted to have that real southern feel. So we started looking in Florida. This was the first town that we looked at.
Wow.
And that was in 2016.
Okay.
And we found the house that we live in. This obviously is not our home. And bought it and then held on to it until we moved down here in 2019.
Okay, so just because you said something here that I didn't realize, so the house adjacent to the farm, is that your house? Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't park there.
There's a lot of that. I mean, our neighbor Nina is lovely, and she always says she has the best neighbors around because we actually live on the other side of that. So it's sort of like a sandwich. But yeah, this whole side of the street's zone commercial.
Okay.
So we built the building so that it looked residential and fit in with the neighborhood. Even though it's commercial over here, we are in the historic district, so we wanted to make sure we abided by that. Put in a what looks to be a two-car garage on the outside, but it is our design studio inside, public restroom, walking cooler, and things like that, with additional studio space upstairs.
Cool, because it definitely fooled me. Every time I come by, I just assumed this was an extension, an extra lot to that house that you did something with.
Yeah, no, so people think it's very funny because, people think that we live upstairs. And I'm like, well, we're not elves. We don't really live upstairs. And then because we have a sink in here to do projects with, sometimes when the garage doors are open, you can hear people ride by on their bikes. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, look at her kitchen. Like, they think that we're living some,
HGTV
like English garden dream that we live inside outside, and I'm sure it looks very dreamy, but
I was kind of hoping that was the case.
I know.
So I know there's going to be seasons because there's always seasons with flowers. So your typical work day looks like what?
It just depends. It depends on the time of year. I think right now it is very lax for us. So we scale back dramatically in July and we take off the month of August. So I tell people that that's our winter. That's when we have a normal break. Because if you do flower farming and things like that, your normal break would be when it's frozen outside. So from frost to frost. So first frost to last frost, which we don't intrinsically have here. I mean, we have cold periods. We had a freeze last year, but those are episodes. They're not like a season. So right now it's very slow for us, like cleaning up, preparing for the fall, working on workshop content and things like that. But I'm over here first thing in the morning, we have some irrigation, but watering, checking on seedlings and things like that. If it's in season, then I'm harvesting all morning because you want to harvest before the heat of the day. When it starts to get warm, we're inside, starting more seeds, working on customers, managing pickups, when we're having subscriptions. Usually our days of the week for pickup are Thursday and Friday. But then we might have like a small event over the weekend, so it would be preparing for that. So it just truly depends.
Sounds busy.
It is busy, but like I said before, it doesn't feel like work. My husband laughs. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go over there for 30 minutes. He's like, no, you're not. You'll be gone for like 3 hours. So I do. I have to set the timer on my phone because I will be over here all day.
Right.
Because there's always some work to do. Because people think it looks so dreamy. And they're like, do you sit out front and drink wine? And I was like, no, I don't. No. I drink wine at home. Yeah. Where there's less work. There's different type of
different
work.
Kinds of work at home.
There's always something to be done here.
Yes. So again, you keep saying things that are prompting more questions. So you start them out as seedlings. and then you put them over, and because you're doing cut flowers, are you constantly having to do this rotation between? Okay, so
Constantly.
That's how you do it. Okay.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, we'll either start things from seed. There's some cut flowers that are very, very difficult to start. And so we work with other farms sometimes to buy what are called plugs. So it'll come as a tray already started.
Okay,
so
right.
Lysianthus is a great flower for us in like late May through early July. And it's notoriously hard to start from seed. You know, just to get a seedling going could be upwards of 16 weeks. And so that can be very difficult. So that's something that we'll outsource and have the plugs brought in. Bulbs and tubers, we start just like those sorts of things. But everything gets started here, gets to be the right height, size, whatever, and then we'll move it outside when it's time for it. And then we're always starting more inventory because the minute a crop sort of ages out, like you could probably get 4 to 6 weeks of cutting on something, and then really the plant has diminished and given all of its energy. So we'll rip that out and start. Sometimes that starts by the plant has sort of aged out or the season changes. You know, really by Mother's Day, we are consistently north of 75, 80 degrees here. And there's certain flowers that just don't like that. You know, ranunculus and anemones are great ones. Once that soil temperature consistently gets above like 60, 65 degrees, they start to shut down because I mean that's their normal cycle. So there's a lot of that of flipping in and out of beds based on seasonality and just sort of where the plant life is.
Okay, so that's interesting. And now you have a beautiful arrangement that we can sort of see. I'm going to take some pictures next to it. So just for fun facts, when I lived in Charlotte, I was a wedding planner, and so I did all my own florals. So I have a little bit of experience, but I'll tell you one of the things that always broke my heart was having to cut flowers or having to do something with them that was dismantling them in any way. So do you struggle with that at all when you're cutting them? Did you at first?
A little bit, but you know, once you start to understand how flowers work, the harder you cut on them and the more frequently you cut on them, the more they will reward you with more blooms. Because if you think about a plant that's like flowered and then the flowers start to die and then the flowers start to go to seed, the whole plant starts to shut down because it thinks it's at the end of its life cycle. So the harder you can cut on it and the deeper you can cut on it, which I know is very, very difficult for people, you know, the more it will branch out and it will give you more stems. Like I see people cutting their zinnias, which is a very common thing that they'll go at their house and they'll cut it this long, whereas like I will cut it so it's this long and we'll get it all the way back, but that will reward me with like 3, 4, 5 more stems down the road.
So that's just a better way to look at it. I know I'm trying really hard with my roses this year because I didn't want to cut them back. But I have been this year, and I am getting
the harder you cut roses back, especially here, because roses, this is a very tough environment for them. There's definitely roses that handle a little bit more heat and humidity, but if you give those guys like a hard chop late June, July, they will reward you come like August, September with definitely better looking blooms. I mean, we went on vacation at the beginning of August and I went through everything and cut everything down to about like 3 or 4 sets of leaves and everything. You know, everybody comes by and they're like, your garden looks really good. And I was like, because we're pretty ruthless with it. Like we cut it back hard.
Okay, so that, I have to take a deep breath every time I go out with my gloves and clippers and I look at my roses and I say, sorry that I'm doing this to you, but I've got to do it. But it does make a difference. It really has made a difference. Because
especially so many things, especially now this time of year, July, August, are struggling. And so the more you can reduce the plant matter so it can just concentrate on the amount that it has to work with versus trying to
all those arms and everything else.
Yep.
So that's just something to keep in mind. I'll keep those thoughts in my mind.
You can do it.
In your garden, because I don't know this, do you do any vegetables out there, or is it just all flowers?
It's all flowers. There's a little bit of veg, you know, some tomatoes and a few things. A lot of that is things that have come back from our compost or a bird has left us a present. We do have a lot of herbs and we do a lot of things like that, but we use those in our flower arrangements. So a lot of basil, dill, fennel, and things like that, but we definitely use that for that purpose.
So in your classes, because I know I just told you I got an email, your upcoming fall workshops, how do you come up with those and who are you collaborating with?
I think it just really depends. So it depends on either what I've heard from customers or something that I think is interesting that ties back into something that we're doing here. So we're doing botanical mono printing, which is taking acrylic paint and gel plates and making prints and making art. We've done cyanotype before, again, using plant material that we've grown here. Another one we have is dried flower crowns. So anything that we grow here that we end up not using that is not diseased, we save. So we do dried flower crowns, dried flowers on pumpkins. We'll make some wreaths for the fall. So we try and keep that as much as possible. As far as collaborations go, it's people who are working in like creatives or makers who I think again tie into what we're doing here. So we've partnered with Ashley of Coastal Roots Greenery to teach an introduction to interior greenery because people want to have houseplants. That's not a skill set that I have. I mean, you don't want to see what's at my house, except for flowers. So, those are the types of people we partner with. We partner a lot with bluebird growers. Nick is a horticulturalist by nature, but also has a food science background. So we've done coffee roasting, cheese making. Again, it's teaching people something that's interesting that they may or may not do ever again. I mean, I had someone come to the coffee roasting class. She was like, I had a great time. I also learned that I will never do that at home, but had a great time. And I think it also fosters a sense of community. We have this space here that's not always being used, and it brings people in and out of our business who might not necessarily want a bouquet, and it just gives them things to do. As I always say, there's nothing against sip and paint, but there's only so many sip and paints you can go to.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So with that, I'm trying to think, we'll just circle back around with all these new workshops that you have coming up. Is this a space here or is it upstairs?
No, it's here.
This is in here. So how many people can you normally fit in this space?
With Christmas wreath making, which is our most desired one, I've had up to 14, but I like to keep them small. I think it gives, because a lot of things are very interactive and you want to have room to move, and I want to be able to work with people and want people to be able to ask questions. We usually have charcuterie, we have wine, so it has a great afternoon, evening feel to it. And I like to keep them small like that. I'd rather have it sold out and or have people clamoring for a second one than get into this big cavernous space and then there's like crickets.
Well, I think you do a good job because I have gone on after I've seen something post and literally gone on 1 or 2 days later and it is sold out and I was like, wow,
they're very competitive.
Is really doing good. So, which is kudos to you. I mean, that's awesome. But you've had so many things that I thought, God, that really sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah,
and like
they're
it would be
fun. And we've got first timers come to some. We have people who I like to call workshop junkies. They've literally been to every single one, which is great. And
should be a limit.
So it's fun. We have a good time with them.
That's cool. So we're going to try to wrap this up. I know you still have things you need to do today. So questions I always ask are describe yourself in 3 words.
I would say that I'm driven. I'm definitely, my husband will laugh when he watches this. I would like to say that I'm very organized. He's an engineer, so that's a whole nother level of organization. And then I would probably say, anyone related, like pretty quick-witted, like just always got like kind of a thing to say.
It's always funny. Like I was saying, my husband and I practiced this last night, and it took him a while to come up with 3 words. And the whole time I was like, "Do you want me to help? Do you want me to help you?
I got 3 words for you.
I got 3 words, buddy. You're not gonna like them, but I got 3 words." So, Christy, what is one thing that you would tell us about yourself that maybe nobody else knows? An interesting fact.
Interesting fact. Well, completely underutilized skill set. I was a French major in college. So there's an interesting fact about myself. You know when you do those icebreaker things, like 2 truths and a lie? So
that
always use that one, and people always sort of got a little, oh, really? Yeah. So, and I started that's actually how I started my retail career. I sort of graduated from school. And then was looking for something to do till I could figure out this other thing. And that's when I started with Ralph Lauren right out of college and worked for them for 15, 16 years.
Very cool.
Yeah, so
and I took French in the 10th grade. I can count and tell you a couple of numbers. My father was very unpleased with that whole that whole thing. But that was a hard language for me. That was a tough one.
It's a tough one. And again, doesn't really do much these days except help us when we travel. So sort of the linguist when we travel.
That's good. That means that it wasn't all for naught.
No, yeah.
It wasn't all for naught.
Yeah, don't get utilized that often.
This has been a lot of fun. I really wanted to meet you, and this is really exciting, getting to know you a little bit better. And I'm gonna do some video and look at your garden and share that with everyone. And thanks so much for spending this time with me today.
You're welcome.
All right, great. Thanks. Wow, that's all I have to say. I was so impressed with Christie, her knowledge of plants and how they work here in Northeast Florida, the garden, the layout, the workshop she offers. And I know this is already a favorite in our community, and it's going to continue to be. So I hope you guys enjoy the video and the blog post all about the Heirloom Yard. If you haven't been, please visit. It is just absolutely amazing, and I know you're going to love it. And as always, I hope to see you around town.